Okay, so the podcast is a it's so hard. So the podcast is called Public Display of Connection. It's a podcast where I have my favorite people on and they bring a poem that they like and then they read it, we discuss it, and then we get into more maybe deeper conversations and intimacy and talk about like where we connect and why we connect. And you might be thinking right now, hey, Aubrey, I don't like poetry. I don't get it. It makes me want to vom every time I look at it. And to that I say, maybe you just haven't read enough poems. Maybe you haven't read your poem yet that will really open you up to the idea of new ideas. And in the words of Walt Whitman, be curious, not judgmental. And you know, maybe you'll hear a poem that you connect with and you'll start racing to your local library or bookshop and screaming at the top of your lungs, where the hell is the poetry section? And I'll be waiting there in the next aisle, creepily watching you, saying, hey, I told you so, and I'll be happy for you. Today we sit down with Samantha Silliman, graphic novelist, filmmaker, and all-around cool cat. Sam reads the poem Atlantis by Hart Crane, and we discuss why Coldplay keeps manure in their office, real-life magic, sexy vegetables, bioluminescence, and Gwyneth Paltrow even makes an appearance. What? Come along for the ride. It's also really hot in here.
Oh yeah,
we're in the air conditioning on. My bangs are getting sweaty. Okay, we'll just do that.
Just take my tights off at some point. Yeah. We just slowly get more and more disrobed as it goes on. Yeah. Naked poetry, everyone.
That would get the butts in the seats.
Absolutely. You should think about doing that.
But you got to wipe the seats down first, for sure.
I don't know if velvet is like the couch to go for with that one. Maybe you want something that's like plastic, or they don't make plastic couches.
Cellophane. We'll just wrap it in like cellophane.
A really nice pleather.
Yeah. We'll put you on that.
Okay,
you'll be the props department.
Okay, great.
For the Naked Poetry Podcast.
I'll be in charge of wiping the sweat down afterwards.
Like the stripper
you
who
only
cleans
give
the
me just like the best jobs.
I always like forget that I need to like not laugh into the mic because I'm like,
oh, is that a thing?
I don't know.
You're gonna have to teach me mic etiquette.
What you do is you just put the entire mic in your mouth.
That's how you get the sound, right?
It reads your thoughts.
God,
that's what happens.
It's amazing.
Thanks, nerds. I'm gonna just do that as a natural segue. Who the heck are you? How did you come to be on this couch now in my house?
Definitely not pleather.
Yeah. Did you break in? Did you, have we just met on the street 5 minutes ago? What's the story? What's the hap?
Well, we met through, we were working on a music video for Coldplay. Coldplay.
That's how cool we are.
I was producing a music video for Coldplay. Did we mention it's Coldplay?
The world's best band.
Yeah, my favorite band. I don't really like Coldplay.
I like Coldplay. I like the old stuff.
I never did it for me.
It's the old stuff.
I get canceled because I don't like Coldplay. That'll be funny. But yeah, we were producing this Coldplay music video, and a mutual friend was like, I have this amazing person you should hire. And I hit you up, and we had, I just remember the video like interview.
Oh, yeah.
Which was less of an interview because I was like, I know I'm hiring this person. I remember.
You're desperate.
I was like, how are you? And you're like, it's a day off for me. So I've just been watching some trash TV, and it was, and you were like, and I, kind of didn't want to put pants on today. And I was like, is this like a reflection of my soul? Like, have I just met like this poem of a person? And I was like,
yes.
So immediately hired you. And then through the course of that, just became really good friends.
Yeah. I feel like you're like one of my favorite people that I've worked with, where it was like, you're just so nice, and actually we're like friendly and we had fun.
It's less of like a mutual collaboration of trying to get this massive project like wrangled into some form.
It's like, I feel like we like trauma bonded off of like, ooh, what's happening? Like,
yeah, because it's like, with those sorts of projects, there's always like, you either never have enough money, time, or people.
Yeah.
And so in that case, we had money and people, but we did not have enough time. And so it was just this really trial by fire, baptism by fire, whatever it is.
And there was like a crazy rainstorm.
Yeah, our first day of shooting, and you saved the day. I called it the Great Pop-Up Massacre of like 2020 or whenever it was.
It was terrible.
And there were these huge gale force winds.
Yeah.
And we
in Malibu, so it's like beach winds coming up a hill.
Yeah. And like 4 of the pop-ups flew away, and it's just Aubrey like screaming into the mic or into the walkie, like, I need help. And she's like holding.
Well, I had my breakfast plate in one hand, and there was nobody else out there, and it was like torrential downpour, and I just like saw the pop-up start to go, and I was like, I still had my breakfast in my hand, and my walkie was on my shoulder, and I was like holding the pop-up as like rain is just pouring down the sleeve of my coat, which was like a thick wool coat, so it was just drenched. And I was like, hey, if anybody could come out, the pop-ups are flying away, help me please. And they came out, and I'm like, do you remember that bag of manure dirt that we found in a drawer that was like super special sauce?
Oh, man. Yeah. It was like, they were like, don't move the dirt. We're like, okay.
Yeah. Chris Martin, what are you doing with your poop dirt?
We'll never know.
Yeah.
Because he never showed up.
Maybe he'll comment. Maybe, you know, when he comes on this podcast, we'll find out the backstory behind that bag of manure.
He can be the next person that you bring on.
Exactly. Yeah. We're like, that's that.
All of the characters were played by like finger puppets, and he had this very specific way that he wanted them to like headbang. And so he sent us I still have this video, but he sent us this video of him like filming the finger choreography like from the hotel room that he was quarantined in because he had COVID, and he drew like a little face on it, and so it's just this like ring. It's like very specific. Video. Oh yeah.
Should we cut to it, or is that copyrighted NDA stuff?
I don't know.
Probably. I mean, we're probably going to get sued for even just mentioning them. They're like, they told about the dirt
and the finger video.
There was also this like box of things that I found where it was like this tinctures where it was like for emotional needs. Another one was like,
you mean you just didn't eat the dirt?
Yeah, it was like emotional trauma tinctures where it's like just literally like sugar water, and it's like flower essence, and it helps with your energy. And I was like, Gwyneth, I see your influence here.
Goop nonsense out of here. But I feel like that's also, you know, like when we were kids and like vitamin water was like sold as like healthy, and it's just sugar water.
Scam artists. There's just like, there's always like a trendy vegetable. What would you say the trendy vegetable is right now?
Do you think that's seasonal also, maybe?
I just feel like there's like a good PR person for a lot of these vegetables where like for a while it was like cauliflower was like the sexy veg. You know, when is broccoli going to have
its day in the sun? Broccolini has it because it kind of reaches the upper culinary echelons.
Did you know broccolini gives you more gas?
I did not know.
Yeah.
That's
what you find out here when you come to this podcast. We talk about facts a lot.
It's farts and facts.
Yeah.
With Aubrey and
that's
Sam.
what it's called. That's the third podcast that I'm going to do.
I got to get on. I got to make my own podcast now.
Yeah, do it. So on this podcast, we do a little bit of poetry when we're not talking about farts. So I wore a shirt that I feel like today was appropriate for the reading. There's a shark on it. Oh. Because I was reading. I don't know if this is like inappropriate or could be considered in poor taste, but this guy definitely met some sharks from what I was reading about.
Yeah. He died, he took his own life in a pretty epic fashion, in like a very poetic fashion.
Yeah. He like wrote an epic poem about Oceania. Well, how does Bjork pronounce it? It's like one breath away from Mother Oceania. You know that song?
I don't.
I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you pretty much got the gist.
Yeah, I think I don't think I need to hear it now.
And then he jumped off the bow of a ship at 32 into shark-infested waters.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus.
Yeah, and the rumor behind it was that he was saying, like, goodbye forever, everyone. And then like, leapt to his death.
He was only 32.
Yeah.
He was a sad boy.
Yeah, my sad gay boys. That's what I was saying. He's an interesting character.
Yeah, I did a little bit of research, but should we read the poem and then we can delve into it?
The poem is Atlantis by Hart Crane. And it's not, the poem that he's really known for is The Bridge.
Yeah.
And that's like the one that's in response to T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. But I loved this one because, like, full disclosure, when I read it the first time, I think I understood like 40% of the references. So,
I had to Google a lot of the words. But when I did, I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah. Because it's like, I think what's cool about it is you get this whole sense of it, even if you don't understand ancient Greek references or even certain English words.
Yeah.
Like, and he's known for like kind of being a difficult to read poet, but it's all about this sort of like sense that you get from it. And Atlantis is my favorite one. All right. This is Atlantis by Hart Crane.
Toot it and boot it.
Through the bound cable strands, the arching path upward, veering with light, the flight of strings. Taut miles of shuttling moonlight syncopate, the whispered rush, telepathy of wires. Up the index of night, granite and steel, transparent meshes, fleckless the gleaming staves, sibylline voices flicker, waveringly stream as though a god were issue of the strings. And through that cordage, threading with its call, one arc synoptic of all tides below, their labyrinthian mouths of history, pouring reply as though all ships at sea, complighted in one vibrant breath made cry. Make thy love sure, to weave whose song we ply. From black embankments, moveless soundings hailed, so seven oceans answer from their dream. And on obliquely upright carrier bars, new octaves trestle the twin monoliths, beyond whose frosted capes the moon bequeaths 2 worlds of sleep. O arching strands of song, onward and up the crystal-flooded aisle, white tempest nets file upward ring, with silver terraces the humming spars, the loft of vision, Palladian helm of stars. Sheerly the eyes, like seagulls strung with rhyme, slit and propelled by glistening fins of light, pick biting way up towering looms that press, sidelong with flight of blade on tendon blade, tomorrows into yesteryear, and link what cipher-script of time no traveler reads, but who, through smoking pyres of love and death, searches the timeless laugh of mythic spears. Like hail's farewells up planet-sequined heights, some trillion whispering hammers glimmer tire, serenely, sharply up the long anvil cry of inchling eon silence rivets Troy. And you, aloft there, Jason, hesting shout, still wrapping harness to the swarming air, silvery the rushing wake suppressing call, beams yelling Aeolus splintered in the straits. From gulfs unfolding, terrible of drums, tall vision of the voyage, tensely spare, bridge lifting night into cycloramic crest of deepest day. O choir, translating time into what multitudinous verb the suns and synergy of waters ever fuse, recast in myriad syllables, psalm of Cathay. O love thy white pervasive paradigm. We left the haven hanging in the night, sheened harbor lanterns, backward fled the keel. Pacific here at time's end, bearing corn. Eyes stammer through the pangs of dust and steel, and still the circular, indubitable frieze of heaven's meditation, yoking wave to kneeling wave. One song devoutly binds, the vernal strophe chimes from deathless strings. O thou steeled cognizance whose leap commits the agile precincts of the lark's return, within whose lariat sweep and should sing, wow.
You're doing great.
This is a long one. In single chrysalis, the many twain of stars thou art, the stitch and stallion glow, and like an organ, thou with sound of doom, sight, sound, and flesh thou leadest from time's realm, as love strikes clear direction for the helm. Swift peal of secular light, intrinsic myth, whose fell unshadows death's utter wound. O river-throated, iridescently upborne through the bright drench of fabric of our veins, with white escarpments swinging into light, sustained in tears, the cities are endowed and justified conclavement with ripe fields, revolving through their harvests in sweet torment. Forever deity's glittering pledge, O thou whose canticle fresh chemistry assigns to wrap inception and beatitude, always through blinding cables to our joy of thy white seizure springs the prophecy. Always through spiring cordage, pyramids of silver sequel, deity's young name, kinetic of white choiring wings, ascends. Migrations that must needs void memory, inventions that cobblestone the heart, unspeakable thou bridge to thee, O love, thy pardon for this history, white as flower, O answer of all, anemone. Now while thy petals spend the suns about us, hold, O thou whose radiance doth inherit me, Atlantis, hold thy floating singer late. So to thine ever-presence beyond time, like spears ensanguined of one tolling star, that bleeds infinity, the orphic strings, sidereal phalanxes leap and converge, one song, one bridge of fire. Is it Cathay? Now pity steeps the grass and rainbows ring, the serpent with the eagle in the leaves whispers antiphonal in azure swing.
Whew!
A journey.
You know what I was thinking while you were reading it is like how you're saying like how he was like kind of like difficult to read.
Yeah.
I wonder what would happen if you put like chunks of that into like Mid-Journey.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Like what it would come up with
the
visually.
imagery. Yeah, that would be the sort of like obvious imagery that comes through it of obviously like the core, these like bound cable strands, which like are all invocative of the bridges and this like the ascent into like modernity and stuff. And so I feel like it would, you know, you'd really get some sort of like, you know, like the biblical version of the angel with like a bunch of eyes, but like as the Brooklyn Bridge or something, you know, like it would be that, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely like you can see a mind that's just almost like exploding within itself.
Yeah.
It's just, there's so much passion and energy storming around within this tight space of this man's mind of like, gotta get it out. Like,
yeah, it really like bursts from the page in a lot of ways, but you can also really feel a lot of like the tension,
the angst.
Yeah. I think, you know, I mean, he as a person was rather tense, I think, but also just, you know, kind of how, especially during that time, you know, you're right on the brink of this like totally new modernity that's like making the world that surrounds you look very different than what it was even 10 years prior.
What about this poem is something that resonates with you personally?
It's something that's always really, I've always been very obsessed with since like a young age is how you find like modern myths and like how the world, you can still sort of find wonder in the world, like in mythology or fairy tales, or even like the children's stories you read as a kid that like made you feel like, you know, you exist in this one reality, but it could just be like right behind it is this whole other rich tapestry of like the mystical and the beyond, right? What I loved about this is really how that it incorporates the mythic. So you've got like Greek god references in here and stuff like that. But he is ultimately talking about these pretty concrete objects of every day that you wouldn't think of as mythic. But, you know, like when you do behold a massive bridge or something like that, like there is something still pretty like epic about like the singularity
bridges.
of like man, that they can create something so massive.
Yeah, it's like injecting magic into our
everyday lives.
Like, yeah, that's something I always like tell my niece. She's 7, and she's like, magic isn't real. And I'm like, yes, it is.
It's all around
like,
you.
You gotta look for it. You gotta find it. And I'm like, it's real. No,
She's
it is.
so stoic
She's
for
like,
a 7-year-old.
It's not. I know for a fact that it's not. And I was like, oh yes, it is. Well, it's like, I think that there's kind of like a jaded perspective to think that there isn't a sense of magic. First, because there's just so much in the world that is spectacular and wondrous. Like, just look at hummingbirds for a little bit. It's amazing. Just all the different things that they've got going on. And the world is like a banquet of wonders to behold. That I like that it's just taking kind of interweaving the magic with, I think humans kind of have removed themselves a little bit from that essence.
That's always the tension, right, between like human beings and whatever modern society you find yourself in. Because there are ways basically, like by design, that we become more separated from like the wondrous, or humans have been on this planet for however many eons, right? But like there's still aspects of the planet that are unexplored, right? Like the deepest depths of the seas. And
they
like,
discovered
now we just know
explored
there's
it
a bunch of billionaires
with the
and angry
submersibles.
orcas.
The billionaires, they're on it. They're discovering the ocean. We don't need to do anything.
Yeah. As long as there's something unknown, there's still like the possibility of magic, right? Or like, and that in and of itself is like a type of magic, Well,
just the fact of like magic existing within our consciousness means that it does exist in some plane, or else we wouldn't be able to conceive of it.
Right.
This made me think of this. It was a hop, skip, and a jump, because sometimes that's how brains work. With ADD. I was at this AI panel, and there were these creators and artists they created this big a sculpture made out of fishing nets that they projected onto the they made some like soundscape of whale sounds and then put it into like color. So the colors projecting on it were they used AI to make it. Or they converted sounds into like image things that they were projecting onto like this sculpture of like nets. And as they were talking about it, they were like talking about how we've invented all this technology and stuff and to get in touch with the ocean. And then he brought up like how there's certain cultures that are just already in touch with the ocean because they're in it. And I was like, this is so crazy that we're creating all these machines and technology and stuff to get more in touch with the planet or the earth or nature. And it's like, just
our very surroundings.
Go in it.
Yeah. It's almost like you need like a lens or a barrier to entry when really it's like, just go touch grass, just touch some fucking grass.
I mean, maybe
can you cuss on this podcast?
Yeah, maybe smoke some grass and then touch some grass. Yeah. I kind of would love to smoke some grass right now, but I have a party that I have to go to later, which like sucks. And I don't want to be too sleepy because I have to schmooze. But yeah, so you found in your life little bits of magic. What's like the most magic-y experience that you've touched?
I think that there's certain moments of kind of like unbridled childhood joy that to me, when I think of those memories, are kind of, they encapsulate some sort of intangible, like magical element. And I don't want to say nostalgia because I think that this is different, but I have this one memory. I went to a boarding school and in a small town in like New Hampshire, right? So you had to kind of like make a lot of your own fun, whether that's stealing the trays from dining hall in the winter and going sledding down the hills in the back. But this one memory that keeps coming up is it was in the spring and it was a rainstorm, and my group of friends and I, there's probably like about 20 of us, and we all sprinted from main campus out to the baseball fields, and we went mudsliding on the diamond, like much to the chagrin, I'm sure, of like the groundskeeper. But we were just like soaked and covered in mud, and we're like returning back to campus, like having been laughing and screaming. And it's like those moments of like pure elation, pure bliss, things that you can't replicate necessarily with any intention. Like you can't go into a scenario and be like, we're gonna have one of those magical moments.
I'm always that person that's like, okay, so we had a magical time. Let's do this every Thursday. We're gonna get together every time. But that sounds great.
Like that. And then, and then also like other moments, I'm a big proponent of traveling alone. Like I think everyone should experience that at some point, because you really are forced to have a connection with what's around you. Like you're not distracted or like hiding behind other people or whatever it is, and so, and you're kind of forced to spend time with like your own thoughts, but also in a completely, foreign.
Well, you're like more aware of the environment because it's foreign.
Exactly.
You're like, what is this?
Yeah.
Where am I?
Like more
Who am I?
Details, like, everything kind of comes at you in like a more technicolor way when you're traveling. So I have like a lot of, that would be my other like magic. This is what our warm-up should have been.
This is what people pay good money for. This is what's going to get the Patreon going, I think. Just get the credit cards out of the pockets.
Money in the bank.
I have a magic moment. Is it okay if I share it?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. So I was on a boat in Thailand, and they like took us to the beach that was like from the movie The Beach. And nice. We had like a sleep aboard where you get to like stay in the bay and you sleep out on the deck of the boat. And then at night they take you snorkeling in like bioluminescent plankton. And it was the most insane thing I've ever experienced. Just like wiping your hand through the water, and it was like glowing and sparkly, and like I've never seen so many adults just instantly turn into like children. It was just like so insane. And when they wanted us to come back on the boat, everybody was like, no,
5 more minutes.
You're not gonna do it. And just hearing all these people like giddy with laughter.
Yeah.
Like there was a lady as well who was just, I'm sure she was like on some sort of drug, but she just like kept laughing. And then everybody else started laughing because we were all like experiencing this thing that we're just like, this is so beautiful and insane. And like, I can't like, you're just like wiggling around and like magic ocean glow bugs and they like they had to like flip the lights on to get everybody to get back on the boat.
That's awesome.
It was like it was definitely magic. And then that happened to me again when I was on a certain drug.
Who's listening?
Not my mom. I hope. And I was like, you guys, there's bioluminescent plankton on the beach. You have to stomp the sand and it lights up. And they're like, okay, Aubrey, like, okay. And I was like, no, I've seen it before. I saw it in time. Like, you guys, trust me, stomp on the sand. And they're like, stomp on the sand.
Touch sand.
Yeah. And then they, like 5 minutes later, I heard somebody be like, oh my gosh, you guys. And I was like, I told you. Bioluminescence.
Yeah.
Magic.
Or, I mean, really just lights where there shouldn't be lights. You know, like my mom grew up in like a rural marina in North Carolina. And I would go there in the summers to visit my grandmother and my grandfather, obviously. But I had never seen fireflies. And I walked out into the backyard at night and was like, I was probably around 7 or 8 at the time. And it was like mind blown.
Yeah.
I'd read about them, you know, in books. And then, but to go and just see that, like, you know, just the little, how they pop in and out and they fade out. I guess it's more of like a true twinkle. Yeah.
I love that. I want that. I want that for me.
Yeah.
Guess let's go to the
South, man.
The South Carolinas. Oh, that's
gotta get your magnolia mouth on, you know.
Magnolia mouth. Is that how they talk in the South?
It's like little more rounded down there, you know. We just got like, we're gonna go down to the bayou. And
Georgia.
We're gonna cook up some shrimp,
some peaches.
Yeah, give me some.
I did some research on Atlantis and I kept thinking that I was getting these like History Channel things, but it was always like some fuckery of ancient aliens.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
I kind of was like, I was like doing stuff in the background and then they'd start being like, Atlantis was real. It was put there by our alien mother overlord. Yeah. And I was like, wait a minute, History Channel.
It's like the guy with the hair and the meme.
Yeah.
Like.
Well, it wasn't. So that's what kind of like took me off guard because I was like, I'm just curious, like what the legends of Atlantis is, because it kind of was bringing up stuff in this poem. And then I just went down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theorist nerds.
That's the danger, you know?
Not factual, I'm guessing. But who knows?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a mythical. I mean, here we don't. I don't believe it was real, but like the whole thing is that it sunk beneath the seas. It was this mythical, you know, almost futuristic city that sunk beneath the seas, and people have like searched for it or thought that, you know, because there are instances. I think, isn't it like Alexandria is part? It became underwater, and so like people think that maybe that was the origin of the myth, but it's always kind of stands as like the treasure that is just out of reach, you know, like.
Do you think that people are going to do that about Florida someday?
Oh, I sure hope so. That's actually a tad built into the graphic novel.
Florida sinking?
Yeah.
Graphic novel, go on.
Oh. That's right.
This is where we
pitched my thing with, isn't it? I'm a writer, and I currently have a graphic novel that is on submission to publishers. Nice. It's called Rare Breeds. It is a horror comedy.
I love that.
Yeah. It takes place in like the 8 days leading up to Y2K. So you got a little nostalgia flair. Yeah.
Nostalgia.
Yeah. It's sort of two best girlfriends have to save the day when interdimensional beings attack their small town in Florida.
So like what we thought was going to happen by 2K.
Yes, exactly. The original working title was Florida Man, but we changed it to Rare Breeds.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm excited to read it.
Yeah, you could.
Also, I'm a fan of your writing partner. She's
Olivia.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's fun too.
She's very funny. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
There was a line, can I borrow that book?
Yes.
Going back to talking about stars and sparkly things and magic. Also, would we like to add the note when you finished?
So this is I originally read this poem in this book in college, and I picked this up at City Lights bookstore in San Francisco, and I was like definitely trying to impress a boy at the time. And my love for that boy is no longer with us, but this book still is, and my love for this poem. And my really amazing college annotation of the last line is just OMFG. I remember reading that. The serpent with the eagle in the leaves whispers antiphonal in Azur's swing. And I just went, oh my fucking God.
Yeah.
It's
meaty.
Yeah.
There was a line that that I had to look up. I want to say it was the sidereal phalanxes.
Sidereal phalanxes, yeah.
Is that the one where it's like an army of stars?
Right. So phalanx can be both. It both implies like the battalion of soldiers, but it also means a bone. It's also like a bone in your finger and in your foot.
Oh.
So it's also kind of got this like connection to body, even though being about like universal and stars and the more like ethereal word usage.
I just love that like I looked up sidereal means like you've got to note here with respect to the distance of the stars. And then the phalanxes, like when I looked it up, the picture that came up on Google Image, I keep checking if that camera is running because it's been a little finicky. I'm watching you. The image that it came up with was just like this army with a fleet with like 1,000 spears.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's so cool to think of the stars like that, where they're just kind of like this.
Going back to your discussion of bioluminescence, right?
Yeah.
How all of these individual parts make up this larger whole that has its own shape.
Yeah.
And also is its own shape, and I keep hitting this, its own shape and its own fluidity and can shift because of all of the millions of parts that are in it.
It's kind of like those drone shows at the Super Bowl.
Absolutely.
You know, that's what I was thinking. That's what he's talking about like, in this poem. He's ahead of his time.
You remember those toys as a kid that like they have a bunch of like
Light Bright
dull nails and you can like put your hand in them.
Yes.
And then it like you see like put your face. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, like as a kid.
Wow. I keep hitting the mics too. Maybe the mic's hitting me. Was there anything that you found interesting about Hart Crane that you knew that in your own like research? In
researching this time around, I read a lot more about his experience, you know, being as a gay man or potentially bisexual man, especially during the time. And I don't always think like you need to do this with authors, like think about their own experiences and then how that can translate into, you know, you could read into it in his poetry potentially. But it was very interesting to see kind of, there were these great quotes where it was like Hart Crane. He was also a drunk, like an absolute drunk and a bit of a disaster. Like he was messy. So like he was like in France, and was like, you know, staying with like a friend of his, I forget who, but basically he disappears for like a weekend or something, goes and like has sex with a bunch of sailors and then like comes back. Does. Yeah. And
Fleet Week.
Yeah, exactly. Like basically has his own Fleet Week. And then the phrase, the friend just says, yes, like Crane was out with his many sailors, you know? And it's like, it's like, his little sailor boys. It doesn't take much to hear some of the sadness and the tension of living in a world in which you don't have to necessarily hide that you are gay, but you cannot talk about it, and it can't be too overt. Like people obviously knew,
like they'd be called like dandies,
right? Yes. He's a dandy.
Yeah.
So
I know that like not all poets are like depressed, but like there is something, I wonder if it's just that it comes out of the necessity of that feeling of needing to express yourself or being closeted or being pent up in some way that is where you get a lot of this passion and this, it's like a diamond, you know.
I was about to say that. Time and pressure.
Yeah. Or also opals I've been finding. I've been watching the show Opal Hunters. It's amazing. It's a bunch of Australian people just like digging around in the clay for opals.
Amazing.
And the whole time, I probably talked about this in the last episode too. It's hilarious. They're just like, wow, look at that one. Look at that. Wow. It's so, wow, fabulous. Like, look at that color. Oh,
I'm not even going to attempt an Australian accent. It would just, it would be too much of a caricature.
Yeah. Would we like to read the last 3 bars again?
Yeah.
Or do we want to talk more about him and his depression and messiness and chaos?
Oh, I feel like you were edging a question.
Oh no, I was just like, I did a little bit of research where it sounded like he struggled, but also was kind of the just like stereotypical starving artist where he like was on like welfare for a little bit and then he would just like sponge off of his friends.
Yeah.
And was just kind of farting around.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminded me of like a lot of the people in LA that are like, you know, just trying to find some like semblance of like an art career and how it's just like, it's just so sad how people who are so gifted and so, you know, who create these iconic works are just so poor and so tortured. And I hope that that's not me someday.
No, I mean, I think, you know, a lot of it with him, I mean, I believe his parents actually had, you know, I think his dad owned a number of patents, but his parents got divorced. So that's sort of, you know, he's you know, child of divorce and
scandal.
I know, especially back then. But I think there's really, especially with anyone who is like utilizing their art to interpret the world around them and then make something, you know, that exists in the world as well. You know, I think that when you're kind of immersed in that level of analysis, I think that sometimes if you don't make sure that you're also looking at the positive lights and then again, like the magic and the wonder and stuff, it can be it can make you very critical. And I think it can spiral into some of these more like tortured and dark moments and countenances and whatnot. So
that's why I feel like it's just so good to inject a sense of wonder into your life, even in little ways where it's like drive a new way home from work.
Absolutely.
Activate your brain that way, like eating different foods, spending time with different people, and like watching, like nature is such a good salve for that. Or, you know, you just watch Planet Earth for a little bit and you're just like, wow,
or
my mind is blown.
Or that new like Game of Thrones otter show.
Oh, sorry. What?
Yeah. It's like, it's sort of like Meerkat Manor, but it's like,
what are these things?
There was this show called Meerkat Manor, and they followed this one mound. I don't know what you call like the community of meerkats, and people were super invested in it. And there's this show, I guess it's about otters, but it's like they've dramatized this whole thing, so it's like there was like the prince, and it's all supposed to be sort of like otter royalty or whatever, and like one like betrayed the other one. It's like high on my list of things I need to watch.
I need that in my life. I will watch it tonight.
Yeah. So like, you know, sense of wonder in that. I'm glad I exist in
I love otters.
This timeline.
That's great. Shall we read these? Is it stanzas?
Stanzas.
How did I know that?
It's like you're a poet or something,
I guess.
So we'll do like the last 3-ish.
Yeah.
Forever deity's glittering pledge, O thou whose canticle fresh chemistry assigns to wrap inception and beatitude, always through blinding cables to our joy, of thy white seizure springs the prophecy, always through spiring cordage pyramids of silver sequel. Deity's young name, Kinetic of white quiring wings, ascends. Migrations that must needs void memory, inventions that cobblestone the heart, unspeakable thou bridge to thee, O love. Thy pardon for this history, whitest flower, O answerer of all, anemone. Now while thy petals spend the suns above us, hold. O thou whose radiance doth inherit me, Atlantis, hold thy floating singer late. So to thine ever-presence beyond time, like spears ensanguined of one tolling star that bleeds infinity, the orphic strings, sidereal phalanxes leap and converge. One song, one bridge of fire. Is it Cathay? Now pity steeps the grass and rainbows ring. The serpent with the eagle in the leaves whispers antiphonal in azure swing.
Don't you love the word petals?
I do.
Anytime
like petals
it's
on a black bough, on a wet black bough.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many words that he uses that are just like delicious.
Yeah. The positioning too of anemone and is very interesting because it's he uses M dashes on either side of it. So it's like, oh, answerer of all, anemone. And so you have this big pause before it. So I also feel like he kind of pulls you, it's almost like he's pulling you up and down out of like the waves a little bit with this one.
Cool.
Yeah. Looking
cool.
Sick
poem, brah.
Sick poem. These like petals and radiances. Like, what's with all these spears?
Yeah. Hell yeah.
That could be your
like,
other podcast.
Why did
Just like bros read poetry.
Oh my God. I love that idea. I'll shelve that for the fourth podcast after
great.
we tape a podcast of your show, which was farts and
Farts and facts.
Farts and facts. Facts about farts.
Yep. I was going to say one of the things that I love about his poetry and this poem in particular is that he uses a lot of words that have a double meaning that refer to something like symphonic or music related. It kind of just really adds to it for me. You know, antiphonal, like whispers antiphonal and azure swing. So antiphonal is it's when you have like dual choral arrangements like working in time. And so it not only has this kind of idea of like the wave itself that like sound makes.
Jesus.
It's also referencing, you know, the institution of the church and whatnot.
Meaty.
Yeah, super meaty, right? Orphic, right? Is like, you know, having an impact that's not apparent to the senses. So it's like beyond ordinary understanding. So that bleeds infinity, the orphic strings. So he's talking about this like divine music almost, like the antiphonal music that like permeates throughout kind of life, right? Like he's trying to capture that. And I just think that's beautiful. And it's like, you know, one song, one bridge of fire. Is it Cathay? And Cathay is ancient China. Yeah. The serpent with the eagle in the leaves. ... question mark. That's like I think that's one
the
of
sense
the only,
of wonder.
Yeah.
That's to like
leaving the space.
What?
Yeah. The serpent with the eagle in the leaves whispers antiphonal in azure swing. So like also like how can you whisper in blue, right? Like
I don't know. That's just like,
but it's really just,
it's like good to think about. Like what is it like to whisper in blue?
Yeah.
I am blue. Oh my gosh, this is gonna blow up. This was delightful. I loved sharing this with you, and like I have never heard of this poem, even though it's like all these poems that I'm looking at, they were like the most famous poet of their time, like, and I'm like, I've never heard of them. Last week it was like Edna St. Vincent Millay, and it was like she was like a hot celebrity poet.
Ooh.
I was like, I don't know. Well, listen to the podcast. Wow. Well, yeah. Thank you for taking the time to do this. Would you like anybody to follow you on anything, or would you like to remain anonymous?
Oh, you can come follow me. I'm an open book on social media.
Here's your...
It's at Samantha Alex on Instagram, and I forget what my TikTok handle is, but you can find it all.
Yeah, we'll plug it in later.
Yeah. I'm pretty Googleable.
I thought you were going to say goopable. It's like, don't invoke Gwyneth.
It's like Beetlejuice. If you say it 3 times in the podcast, she pops up with like a vagina stone, you know?
Oh, God. I'm so happy that Coldplay decided to make a puppet music video.
That never came out.
How we met.
That's how we met.
Well, at the end, we do a little hug, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
We're both not wearing deodorant, though.
It's in the mail. I ordered it. Bye.
They kiss.
Magic. Oh, wait. I think that they have feedback if you put them together.
Sorry.
It's the most narrow hug. You were right in my pits, too. I'm sorry. We'll pay you extra for that.
All right.
All right. Should we go open the window?
Yeah,
let
let's
some
do
of this
it.
air out?
Yeah.